There's a moment a lot of people know. You're at a party, or a family gathering, or maybe just scrolling through Instagram, watching everyone's group photos and weekend plans, and something quietly tightens in your chest. Not exactly sadness, not quite loneliness, just this low, persistent hum of, why doesn't that look like my life? And if you've spent most of your life with a small circle, or almost no circle at all, you've probably been handed a story about yourself. That you're difficult, that something's off, that you don't try hard enough, or care enough, or smile enough. Society is very generous with that particular story. But here's what rarely gets said out loud. Some of the most psychologically rich, emotionally intelligent, and deeply self-aware people on Earth have very few close friends. Not because they failed at connection, but because of who they are. Because of traits so rare and so specific that most social environments simply aren't built to hold them. This isn't about making you feel better with empty words. This is about accuracy. Because if you recognize yourself and what's coming, the most honest thing I can tell you is you were never the problem. You were just misread. So let's talk about the 5 rare traits that almost always appear in people who move through life with a very small or very quiet social world. Trait 1. You think at a depth that most conversations never reach. Psychology shows that individuals with higher levels of what researchers call need for cognition, a genuine hunger for deep, complex thought, consistently report feeling more socially isolated, not because they withdraw, but because surface-level conversation feels almost physically uncomfortable to them. Think about the last time someone asked you, "How are you?" and you actually wanted to answer, not with "good, busy, you know how it is," but honestly, with nuance, with the actual texture of what's been going on inside you. And then you looked at the situation, measured the energy in the room, and said, "Good, busy, you know how it is." That's not shyness. That's an awareness that depth requires the right container, and most rooms aren't it. People who think deeply tend to find that small talk doesn't just bore them, it exhausts them. It's like being a pianist asked to play with oven mitts on. You can do it, it just costs something. And over years of that cost, many deep thinkers quietly retreat, not out of arrogance, but out of a kind of emotional conservation. The reframe here is important. Your depth isn't a wall between you and others, it's a filter, and what they let through is worth keeping. Trait 2. You have an unusually low tolerance for inauthenticity. There's a concept in psychology called self-monitoring, which refers to how much a person adjusts their behavior to match social expectations. High self-monitors are often very popular. They read the room brilliantly, shapeshift easily, and make everyone feel at ease. Low self-monitors, people who show up the same way regardless of who's watching, often struggle socially. I remember a narrator in a novel once saying something like, "I've never been able to make myself smaller to fit a room." A lot of people read that and felt it in their bones because they'd been quietly carrying the same thing for years without a name for it. The truth is, if you can't fake it, you won't accumulate fake relationships, which sounds obvious, but the downstream effect is that your social world stays small, not empty of meaning, but small in number. And research consistently finds that people who prioritize authenticity over social approval tend to have fewer but significantly more stable, trusting, and nourishing relationships when they do form them. You're not antisocial, you're just not interested in the audition. Trait 3. You process experiences so deeply that you need significant time alone. Psychologist Elaine Aron's research on highly sensitive people, a trait found in roughly 15 to 20% of the population, identified something fascinating. Highly sensitive individuals don't just feel things more intensely, they process everything more thoroughly. More layers, more connections, more time needed to settle after stimulation. This means that for a significant portion of the population, social interaction isn't just tiring in the ordinary way, it's genuinely dense with input. Every conversation carries subtext, every environment carries texture. Every interaction gets filed, turned over, and examined long after the moment has passed. If you've ever come home from a social event and needed an entire day to decompress, not because it was bad, but just because it was, you know exactly what this means. And if you've ever canceled plans not out of laziness, but a genuine sense of being already full before the night began, you know this too. The hard part is that this trait is almost invisible to people who don't share it. To them, canceling looks like indifference. Needing quiet looks like coldness. Taking a few days to reply looks like disinterest. And so, over time, misreadings accumulate. People drift away, not because you drove them off, but because the translation was lost. What's important to understand is that needing deep recovery time isn't a flaw in your wiring. It's evidence that your system is running at a higher resolution than most. The image is richer. The processing just takes longer. Trait 4. You have a strong, clear sense of your own values, and you won't compromise them for belonging. Research in social psychology has repeatedly confirmed that one of the most powerful human drives is the need to belong. We are wired, almost at a biological level, to seek inclusion, which makes it all the more striking when someone consistently chooses integrity over acceptance, because that choice goes against a very deep current. People with a well-developed value system, a real one, not a theoretical one, often find that groups make them uncomfortable, not because they're judgmental, but because groups have a gravitational pull toward conformity. And conformity, for someone with strongly held values, feels like a slow erosion of self. So they leave groups, or never fully enter them. They find themselves unable to stay in friendships that require them to look away from things that matter to them. They lose people not through cruelty, but through honesty. And the result, often, is a social life that feels sparse, but that also feels clean, unburdened, real. The quiet frustration of this, of course, is that you can end up feeling like an island, principled but alone. And that has its own particular ache. What matters is recognizing that your values aren't what's pushing people away, they're what's drawing the right people toward you. Slowly, selectively, surely.
Trait 5. You are genuinely comfortable in your own company, and most people find that quietly intimidating. Here's the paradox almost no one talks about. One of the most socially attractive things a person can develop is ease with solitude, the ability to not need company, to not perform for an audience, to be genuinely okay in a quiet room alone. And yet, that same quality, when visible, can make others feel subtly unnecessary, subtly challenged. Studies in attachment theory show that people with secure attachment, those who can self-regulate, who don't need constant external validation, are actually the most capable of deep intimacy, but they're also often perceived as distant, hard to reach, or not needing anyone, which discourages others from reaching out. If you're someone who genuinely enjoys your own company, who doesn't doom scroll to avoid silence, who can sit with a book or a walk or a long thought without discomfort, you are already doing something most people spend years trying to learn in therapy. But that same groundedness can read as unavailability, and unavailability, real or perceived, keeps people at arm's length. The work here isn't to become more needy, it's to stay grounded while also letting people see that the door is open, that your comfort in solitude isn't a wall, it's a foundation. So here's where we arrive, after all of that. If you have few friends or none that feel truly close, I want you to sit with this for a moment. What if the story you were given was simply wrong, not incomplete, not half true, actually fundamentally wrong? What if the people who told you there was something missing in you were simply encountering something in you that they didn't have a category for? Deep thinkers, authentic feelers, sensitive processors, value-driven individuals, and people at peace with their own solitude. None of these traits belong on a list of social failures. They belong on a list of psychological strengths that most people spend their whole lives quietly wishing they had. That doesn't mean loneliness isn't real. It is. And if you feel it, that feeling deserves to be honored, not explained away. But there's a difference between loneliness as a signal, I want more connection, I'm open to it, I'm moving toward it, and loneliness is a verdict. I'm broken, I'm unlovable, this is just how it will always be. You are not a verdict. You are a person with rare traits, moving through a world that hasn't quite learned how to see you yet. The friends who are worth having, the ones built on truth rather than convenience, they find people like you and feel for the first time like they can finally exhale. Because you won't ask them to perform, because you'll meet their depth with your own, because you'll be honest when everyone else was comfortable. That kind of friendship is rare, which means it takes time, which means a quiet social life right now isn't evidence that it won't happen. It's just evidence that it hasn't happened yet. Keep going. Keep being exactly who you are. And trust the depth in the end always finds its own level. If something in this resonated with you, if you recognized yourself somewhere in these pages, subscribe, because this channel exists for exactly that person. The one who thinks too much, feels too deeply, and was told that was a problem. It never was. We'll keep proving that, one video at a time.